Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. I am your host, Chris, and I do have a co-host tonight, although he will be a little bit late. He's going to be showing up. He's a special guest. I've known him since high school. His name's Matt. I'll do a proper introduction when he gets here. But in the meantime, we're going to cover some topics until he gets here. Over the course of the last week, there has been a lot of things going on in the nation, especially in regards to politics. Some funny stories I would like to share as well. And we're going to get into it. We have a pretty interesting night ahead of us. We're going to end the night on some racial issues in America, the racial divisions, some of the stories involved in that, including the Chicago incident. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I think that with my partner that's showing up, the conversation is going to be phenomenal because him and I have had these types of discussions before. On a one-on-one basis, and that's exactly why I wanted to invite him this week, because I think he's the perfect person to have the opportunity to speak to us about these things as we end out the week here with the topic. So while we're getting started here, what I want to do is introduce you to my podcast. As I said before, I'm Chris. I cover the week's topics over the last week, things mainly that I've posted on the Generation Y Conservative Facebook page. Then I go back and pick from those the most interesting, maybe some breaking news that happened today. We actually had a couple things that were breaking today, and I like to cover those. Now, if you're watching right now, you're watching on Facebook Live, but I would actually encourage you after the show is over, say Sunday afternoon or Monday morning is when I typically get the chance to edit everything over the weekend and post it. I like to actually put an HD version of the audio and video on my YouTube channel. Things are really happening fast right now. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for the Generation Y Conservative. You can also find me on Facebook, which is what we're watching on right now. All you have to do is search for the Generation Y Conservative on there. You can always tag along and get involved in the conversation on my Twitter page. And my Twitter handle for that is @GenYConservative without the E on the end. So @GenYConservative. So you can follow along on there. This week I was actually approved for my podcast to show up on Google Play, so it's going to be showing up there. And in the meantime, I'm starting to work on getting it the subscription or the RSS feed to go through iTunes as well. So you'll be able to listen to these podcasts on those and subscribe to them. Those are all in the works right now, and I'm really looking forward to that because that's going to launch things in a new direction as well. So we're really excited for that. So welcome again to the podcast. As I said before, Matt will be joining me shortly. He'll be here. In the meantime, we're going to get right into it and talk about what's going on out there. So the first story I want to go over is that a mother has detailed her heartbreaking decision to carry her terminally ill baby to term so she could donate the infant's organs and enjoy just 15 hours of life with her. So in this case, what happened was Abby Ahern, who's 34, her and her husband live in Cashion, Oklahoma, was devastated when she was told that her 19-week scan that her daughter was incompatible with life. Now, in this case, what most people say is they give the option of abortion, really, in this type of case, because it's of the infant's health or the mother's health, and it starts going into that territory where they start pushing for that type of thing. But luckily for in this case, in this story, what happened was the baby, who Abby and her husband Robert, who's also 34, they had this terminal illness for this child. It was, I don't even know how to say it. I don't even want to butcher it. But what happened was they decided to go ahead with the pregnancy so they could enjoy their daughter's 14 hours and 58 minutes of life, and then anticipated donating her organs to other babies that were in need. So there was really, the decision was all around a great one. Unfortunately, the baby's organs were not viable for transplant due to a low oxygen level, but they were used for research. They were able to also donate portions of her heart valves as well. So some of it was able to be saved, and some good things came of it. So that was pretty great. The defect that this baby was dealing with is what it lends to is underdeveloped brain and an incompatible skull. which affects 1 in 1,000 pregnancies, most of which actually end in miscarriage. So this one was pretty lucky. It didn't end in a miscarriage, and they got to spend some precious time with this baby, and there's some really great pictures on that. You can, again, find those on my Facebook page, A Generation Y Conservative. Go through, read the heartbreaking story, but read the absolute joy that these parents went through to be able to hold their daughter in this case, and family come and visit and spend the little bit of time that they did get with her. And I thought it was just an amazing story that was, deserved to be shared. So here's some going into talking about this type of issue and keeping on the topic of maybe abortion related issues and babies and everything. There were accounting documents from middleman tissue organizations that showed that several PPFA, which is the Planned Parenthood Federation of America affiliates, made a profit from the transfer of fetal tissue. So maybe you were paying attention over the last year. Actually, last summer is when these issues were just hitting one after one after one after another. And it was the case where a lot of these things with the undercover videos were coming out where Planned Parenthood was getting caught selling the tissue from aborted fetuses or babies, and they were getting in trouble for that, and it just caused massive controversy on Capitol Hill because of this organization being funded by taxpayer dollars. And the right has been calling for the defunding of at least the taxpayer portion of Planned Parenthood for quite some time. And you just have this situation now where there is actual evidence of Planned Parenthood actually making money on these the tissue of these babies. So there's no clear picture on how much the abortion provider actually made from selling the aborted babies, but there is evidence in one case that a vendor for Planned Parenthood, STEM Express, a for-profit tissue procurement company based in Folsom, California, paid Planned Parenthood $55 for an aborted baby's brain, then made a 2,800% profit by selling it to a customer for over $3,000. So here's what it comes down to for me. Why I believe that this is an absolutely evil situation in my mind, okay, is that if there's a profit margin on selling baby body parts, then there's also a clear incentive for Planned Parenthood to perform abortions to acquire these parts, right? So the argument from the left is always that even though Planned Parenthood offers these abortions, they actually consult with the mothers and try to give them every option possible and make sure that the mother is comfortable and try to do all these things for the mother, all these choices and women's health. And that's always the argument, right? But in this case here, if there's a profit margin on selling these baby body parts, then there's a clear incentive for Planned Parenthood to actually push for an abortion so that they can make money and a profit on selling these baby body parts. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So if there is a clear incentive for that, then there's also a reason why when presenting choices to the would-be mothers that this organization would push for the abortions as the best option. Okay? And that actually turns out to be why so many people on the right or that are pro-life, because there's pro-life Democrats as well, why people get so mad at this organization that they keep on lying about where the taxpayer funds go to. They say that the funds don't actually go towards the abortion procedures because it can go to women's cancer screenings and stuff like that. But we all know that money into an organization is dispersed and used as necessary. It has nothing to do with going towards specific things. Unless, of course, you're a public organization, in which case you have funds that are allocated towards certain things. And that happens in private organizations too. But it's just less likely in an overall what they call health organization in this case. All right. So let's get to some funny news too that happened over the last week. So CNN used an image or a screenshot from a video game called Fallout 4. If you're not familiar with it, it's a nuclear apocalypse type world where players live in this nuclear wasteland apparently, or I've played it so I know what it is, but what they did was they used a screenshot from this in their report on Russian hacking. Okay, so what actually ended up happening was you had in the game there's this hacking mini game where players tackle these screens where you actually have to figure out code or pick out what's going to be the best way to get into the door. And they took that straight from the game and used it as an actual screenshot to promote this idea that the Russians were involved in hacking the United States power. I think it was like a power station or something like that. And also probably also recognizing that there was a problem with the elections as well, that they keep on trying to say that the Russians were tampering with that. Along the same lines, the Washington Post Express, really screwed up on their cover for female empowerment. And what actually happened was they were really excited to gush about the so-called female empowerment by the upcoming Women's March on Washington to protest President-elect Donald Trump. So they ran a cover to reflect that. The only problem is what happened was on the cover of this issue was a bunch of people all lined up together, and it actually formed a symbol. You've seen the male and female symbols, male being a circle with an arrow coming out of it, female being a circle with kind of a cross coming out of the bottom. The only problem is that they actually used the male symbol for this front cover, and people just went bananas over this thing. So it was pretty interesting because, you know, they got a lot of flack online. What happened was a lot of feminists basically were coming out on Twitter and attacking them for the issue itself. And that, you know, if you actually read through the Twitter comments, what they were actually saying was it was a bunch of women saying that this wouldn't have happened if they had more females on the staff. There was nothing in regards to if this was an actual male that did this in graphic design or if it was a female, but they say if you actually hired more females, this wouldn't have gotten past the editing portion stage of this. So it was just kind of ridiculous to see that kind of attitude as well, to blame this on a male graphic designer without actually knowing if it was a male graphic designer. It could have very well have been a female graphic designer who didn't know the difference between the two symbols that they were being used. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, these stories, what it comes down to is if you're really that upset over these kinds of issues, you know, you need to take a chill pill, because it really, I'm actually using these stories not to be so pissed off at them or anything. I think that they're funny stories, and you have to mix in a little bit of humor with the type of stuff that we're covering, because to be honest with you, later on we're going to get into some pretty deep stuff, and it's going to get pretty nasty as far as, you know, some of the stuff that's going on in America right now. So let's jump over to Donald Trump and the effect that he's actually having on the economy just weeks before he actually takes office. And I gotta be honest with you, I am just shocked at watching some of these things. I actually come from a background where I worked with a friend of mine in the commodities market. So we actually had CNBC on all day watching it and watching how markets reacted to things. And it's just been amazing to see how businesses and markets are reacting to Donald Trump as a president. So it's getting pretty interesting out there. What we have is Ford is canceling plans for a $1.6 billion plant in Mexico, and they're investing $700 million in a Michigan expansion instead. So Ford Mustangs go through the assembly line at the Ford Flat Rock assembly plant August 20th in 2015, Flat Rock, Michigan. The Ford Motor plant, which had been bashed by Donald Trump for shipping jobs outside the U.S., announced on Tuesday that it will cancel production of the $1.6 billion plant in Mexico and will instead invest $700 million in Flat Rock, Michigan. So the U.S. auto giant said it was adding 200 direct new jobs in Flat Rock to produce high-tech electrified and autonomous vehicles, plus the Ford Mustang and Lincoln Continental. Ford had originally planned on building its Ford Focus in St. Louis Potosi, Mexico. The company said it will continue to build its Focus at an existing plant in Mexico to improve the company profitability. The Ford chairman, Bill Ford Jr., said he spoke with President-elect Trump on Tuesday morning to tell him of the decision to invest in the U.S. and cancel the Mexico plant, according to Reuters. And we're also, he said, encouraged by the pro-growth policies that President-elect Trump and the new Congress have indicated that they will pursue. And this is coming from the Ford president, Mark Fields, in a statement. So we're going to take a break here for 1 second. And what I want to do is actually invite my buddy Matt, who's going to be co-hosting with me. He just got here. So Matt can come on over. We'll make sure that you have enough room. We'll move the table here if we have to.
Okay. Back here.
You good?
All right.
All right. So let me do a little introduction for you real quick. I went to high school with Matt. We actually have retirement plans together at some point, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Get a house next to each other.
Oh, yeah, Texas,
porch.
yes.
Yeah,
and then the rocking chairs, tell young kids to get off the lawn. That's right.
So,
That's right.
So we've been talking about that since high school.
Oh, my God, yeah. 17 years, something like that.
But you know what? I think that it's an important opportunity here for me to actually give a little bit more background with you, too.
Okay.
Because, this whole thing for me started off with just my Facebook page. And it's been kind of growing from there. And you kind of have your own thing going on right now, too.
I
do.
So yeah.
if people actually like kind of the nerd culture like we do.
Yes.
Kind of like comic books and movies out
and
there.
film,
TV,
anime,
all
video
that kind
games.
of stuff. But
Yeah.
you also jump into sports on
Yes.
your page. So why don't you quickly, before we get into some more topics here, why don't you talk about Jig Nation?
Well, a geek is a term I coined, combining the jock and the geek into one. It's a very rare blend. Most people can't hang with fellow geeks, as we'll be talking about Final Fantasy 15 that just dropped in November, and then all of a sudden we'll be talking about Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. And people look at us like either traditionally you're one or the other. In high school.
I think that's changing. And I think a lot more females are getting involved in this type of culture too.
Females were always they were always there, but they were hidden.
Yeah,
because it wasn't cool to be a female gamer,
right.
And it wasn't cool to be a jock and be a gamer.
Yeah.
And if you were a jock and you played games, you had to play Madden or like NBA Live, and maybe a first-person shooter.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
now jocks are realizing, hey, I can watch anime, I can watch sci-fi, I can like Doctor Who, and I can still play ball and crack skulls. So. That's what we at Jig Nation, we embrace that, and it's good. We've got our own podcast. We have a Facebook page as well, and we just enjoy chopping up that very unique dichotomy that we have.
So go ahead and tell them where they can find that.
Well, you can find us on Facebook, at Jig Nation. You can find me on Twitter _Rockin' Mr. Magic, and my co-host Unique DNA. That's UNIQDNA. And we're Jig Nation. We have a couple of the guys with us that do some movie reviews and stuff on the Facebook page. Definitely check it out. And we're always about community, so we want people to be engaged with us.
All right, good.
All right,
so I actually just got done talking about how Donald Trump is affecting the markets right now with just being him.
Yeah.
With the stuff that he's saying on Twitter about how businesses should be run and everything. Now, I'll get into it after this one. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily agree with his tactics because I don't believe in forcing someone's arm or manipulating the markets with things. And I don't think this comes into forcing someone. I think
I agree with you that like you mentioned to me before, some of the Twitter remarks he makes about business. It's almost like public shaming, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to public shame a company to do this or that. Isn't that what, especially as conservatives, isn't that what we're supposed to be against? Like,
right.
That just doesn't
we should
vibe with me.
Yeah, what it comes down to for me is, I believe in the freedoms of everything in America, right? Freedom of business and everything. So instead of this kind of manipulating on, hey, this is going to be the type of penalty that you're going to incur if you do this type of thing, what I would actually rather see is our corporate tax rate is among the highest in the world.
It's insane. Yeah.
And in order for us to compete, we would have to lower that to at least Ireland's, which I believe is 13%.
Well, you say that, it's funny because, yes, the rate is where it's at, but locally, we pay the price when we want a company to come. What is the number one thing that has to happen? They have to get a tax break, no matter what.
Yeah.
If a company's going to come somewhere, they have to get tax breaks. They're not going to build there. They're not going to have their call center or whatever happens to be there. So I agree with you. We have to lower it, but even just not necessarily always lower it, maybe to Ireland's rate, but make it at least some incentive to continue to have your business here in the United States, whether it's. And I don't think it always has to come through a tax break per se. There's a lot of other government, things that are regulated or over-regulated that could be tweaked to entice businesses to continue to stay their grassroots here in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest arguments I often find is the fact that, a lot of people are bashing companies for getting all these tax breaks because they feel that corporations are too greedy and evil and everything.
Right.
But at the same time, the more money that they have in their pocket, the more they have to hire employees to expand their business. Now, not many of them do it. Look at Apple, for instance. They have trillion, I think.
They have more money on cash on hand than the government. Yeah,
than most countries.
Than most countries, exactly.
And that's just building up. Now, do I blame them for that? Honestly, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
It's a big deal.
But there is an opportunity there for them to actually take that money and invest it if they wanted to. You know what I mean? So it gives that opportunity, and
Well, you mentioned Apple, for example, as a former Apple employee. I happen to love most of what they do, especially when it comes to their business practices. Put it this way.
They have great stuff.
Well, they have great stuff. And the fact that you look at a place like where we live in the Lehigh Valley. The Lehigh Valley is nothing.
Don't narrow it down. I don't need crazy liberals.
Half the people that were listening have no idea where the valley is.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, which is actually furthers my point. The fact that we have a store here, an Apple store, not a third party, not one of these Mac this or Mac Mall or whatever, that we have an actual Apple store, that they planned it. It wasn't a flip of it wasn't a whim. No. They strategically planned locations. Yeah. The fact that we were a part of that strategic plan is really cool to how they wanted to position their stores, but also provide jobs for this area.
Yeah.
And for so long, most of our lives, we were an afterthought.
Yes, absolutely.
No one had ever heard of us. If we had to go travel to California or Texas someplace, people said, "Where are you from?" We were not staying in town. We were like,
Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from the Philadelphia area. Like, oh, okay, I know where that is. You say, again,
Allentown.
Billy Joel
song.
And I had never heard of that until I moved here. I'm from Detroit. I'm not a Billy Joel guy. I'm a Motown guy.
The booming economy.
Don't get me started on my home state. It's a hot mess. Still can't drink the water in Flint. But the fact that they strategically place these stores in areas, in some areas you just wouldn't think that they placed them, providing retail jobs to at least, depending on the size of the store, about 30 people.
Right.
Are getting jobs there. And because it's part-time for most of them, you're probably at another 10 to 15 to that number.
Yep.
And especially for young kids, college kids, or someone looking for part-time work, it's a great opportunity. And they take care of you. Yep. And I have stock in them because I worked there. If I wasn't, I couldn't afford their stock. It was like $700 at that point. I couldn't afford it. But they create a lot of great opportunities. And a lot of companies should, I believe, take cue after them. Make your employees... have a great place to work, a place where actually they feel like family. And that's something that we've lost, I'd probably say, since the late 80s. Companies at large have lost that feeling like they actually care about you and investing in you.
Whether it's caring or some sort of financial incentive.
But not even just financial, that they made you feel like you were more than just a cog.
Yeah.
And that's lost in today. I watched my father go from feeling that way as a salesman to where he retired under the Medtronic brand, completely realizing he's just a simple cog in the wheel, and there's no concern beyond that, which I think is a shame, because at the end of it, we're all people.
But we're also dealing with a generation of people here now that believe in the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which is where we believe, where I believe you and I probably stand together on this, is we see the opportunity that businesses exist to make money, right?
Number one.
That's
always number one,
right? If there's an ability to take care of their people invest in them and keep them there so that they don't have to put out more money for training or anything else, all those things kind of go inside together.
Exactly.
Then that kind of follows suit, right?
Right, because it's better for your business to promote from within and grow up within.
Absolutely. So, but we're dealing with a generation now right below us, which we're actually probably considered to be part of in some cases, depending on where they align those years.
I'm on the cusp of late Gen X, and you're. Yes, the earliest Gen Y, which I don't claim Gen Y. Yeah. Gen X.
So, but this generation that's coming up, or that's in their 20s and late teens right now, because I'm seeing a switch in the newest generation.
Definitely.
Mentality.
Definitely.
But what we're seeing with this millennial generation is the opposite end of the spectrum that we're on, where they focus on a company's first priority should be taking care of its people. And if you have to lose money to do that, then so be it. That's what I'm really actually seeing that a lot.
Okay. I haven't heard that extreme as far as the losing money. I'm definitely seeing a huge emphasis on taking care of the employees. As someone who's worked in the tech startup world, that is something that is huge in that world. Every similar job I've applied for in that space, one of their biggest factors is to take care of our people in various ways. So, I love that because I think that promotes a healthy culture. I think it just adds to a complete feeling that the market hasn't been giving for a while. Because even though the 50s isn't a great time for everyone in history, but pensions, things like that was the security that the baby boomers had that we do not have.
Social Security
isn't around. So when a company says to you, for example, one I applied for recently, they're 100% of your benefits are paid. They provide you with your technology, and they want you to keep learning. So they provide you with a free Kindle and unlimited books. And on top of that, you get unlimited Starbucks. They send you a card and they refill it.
Can it be Dunkin'?
It's Starbucks. You work at tech, you've got to like Starbucks. Dunkin's the East Coast thing.
So you're going to be wearing skinny jeans and a beanie and a little scarf and.
No, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm stuck in the 90s. It's all about the baggy pants.
We're going to move on here real quick. So to go along with Ford actually canceling their plans to move from the new plant in Mexico to keeping it in Michigan, what we also have
I am smiling so much. As a Michigan native, I am extremely happy for that, just from my home state.
I'll go off topic real quick here. Where we live here in the Lehigh Valley,
yes,
Allentown. When did you move here?
1996.
So
I remember Mack trucks being big, but it was dying.
Yeah,
starting to die.
Yeah, and what I would actually say is probably around that time is when I was old enough to start realizing that Allentown was falling apart. It was already in the throes of it, if not done with it, right? And it just got worse. But we're actually seeing a build-up and resurgence.
Oh, most definitely. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's actually pretty incredible. We got the Lehigh Valley Phantoms Stadium down there. Shopping district expanded from that. And I'm really excited about that. And to go along with your point, the fact that Ford is actually staying in Michigan, there is an opportunity for Detroit to be built up again.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of opportunity.
But, I mean, there's properties that are going for literally hundreds of dollars out there.
If I had the money, I would have already bought several places.
Yeah.
Because I care about my home city. I care about my home state deeply. I still have family and friends. I have friends in Flint. It's a very passionate thing for me to be able to help, my home state. So yeah, there's properties up there that are literally like you say hundreds, literally $200. Right. For a 3-bedroom ranch in Detroit or Dearborn Heights.
But you got to worry about the crime around it and everything. I mean, that's why they're going.
But honestly, the crime in Detroit is higher, of course, than anyone compared to here. But
people are desperate.
People are desperate. But honestly, the outlook is no worse than right now than Philly is.
Oh, yeah.
Or Chicago. Mm-hmm. We're getting more news because of the water crisis mostly, and the fact that right now Detroit's a ghost town compared to what it was. I mean, there are entire sections there are districts that were, thriving. Right now, those areas are where those where your hipster photographers go to take, what do they call that?
RT photographs or something.
Yeah, they call it art, but they call it something like disaster porn or like it's run down. Like just take pictures of run down things.
Like abandoned.
Abandoned,
stuff.
yes, yeah, abandoned stuff, abandoned warehouses, abandoned factories, abandoned plants, where nothing but vagrants are right now because they, homeless people
want to
are.
spotlight a social, injustice issue, basically.
Well, no, it's for the art, it's for the look, it's for
That
the lighting.
too, but I'm also seeing things.
Oh, some will, yes.
The throes of the trying to survive in these conditions too.
It's terrible. Oh yeah. I mean, just go to East Detroit and just look around. Go past 8 Mile. No, I'm not mentioning the movie. Can't stand the movie. But just I'm saying, that's just the geographical line of demarcation.
So what we're getting into is Ford is keeping their stuff in Michigan. We also have Toyota Motor Corporation. Their shares fell sharply after President-elect Donald Trump tweeted about the automaker. In his tweet, what he said was exactly, Toyota Motors said it will build a new plant in Baja, Mexico to build Corolla cars for U.S. No way! ! Build plant in U.S. or pay big border tax. So I'm actually looking at the stock and the timeline of it and the falling and everything here. It looks like it was slightly above 97, probably about 97 and a quarter.
Okay.
And it's been dropping down to probably 94.50 since this announcement late Thursday.
And how many days was that?
Well, I have numbers through late this afternoon.
Okay.
And that was Thursday.
So let's say a day and a half.
In a day, yeah, it dropped. That's a significant drop.
That's a big drop. The president-elect's allowed to say what he wants to say. Can he actually make that happen? Maybe, maybe not. I'll say this. We're talking about Toyota. I grew up in Toyotas. I have a Lexus. If I'm going to stand by a foreign product when it comes to automobiles, that's not a high-end vehicle, I would stand by Toyota.
Okay.
I would trust them to build a good product, regardless of where their plant happens to be, whether it's Japan, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in Mexico, whether it's in the United States. Would I like a plant in the United States for U.S. jobs? Of course. When it comes to companies based outside this country, I have a little more leeway as far as where they want to go. I think this is an unnecessary tweet.
Yeah.
It's like this doesn't make much sense.
And
now you're making it seem before you even take an office that you are unwilling to even be open to compromise or discuss or be when it comes. This is supposed to be free trade after all, and free trade means free trade.
Yeah.
That means go where you want to go.
Well, to Donald Trump's point, one of the things I've always praised him for is I actually heard him on one of the conservative talk shows back in 2007, 2008, well before he was running for president.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the trade and tariff system and taxes between countries and how unfair it is at that point in time. And I thought, holy crap, this is Donald Trump, like knowing that kind of stuff. So that really impressed me all along and everything. I do want to point out quickly, I just made a big mistake. Sometimes it happens, very rarely. What actually happened was we had this drop for Toyota. The percentage drop and the actual share drop actually dealt with Time Warner, whose stocks plunged nearly 4% after Donald Trump told a confidant that he still opposes the deal with AT&T.
Oh, so that was a huge deal.
This is 3 stories now
where
Donald Trump has, in a roundabout way, influenced, whether it's via his tweets or telling someone, these huge market shifts, right? And how do I feel about that? Again, I don't think that. First of all, this is the market reacting. This is not the companies reacting.
Of course,
the companies are the victims of such drastic changes.
Of course,
because it's people buying and selling their stock reacting to him. So, again, I don't necessarily feel that this is Donald Trump strong-arming companies into actions.
No,
what I think is manipulation via just being who he is in the position.
Well, manipulation by exposure. Because when we were in high school, he could have said the exact same things.
And
if he was president, nothing would have happened because, technology is so far that where we were kids, where the exposure is just there. So people like you and I who may happen to invest in companies like that can react,
Right.
compared to where just the stock market and the traders would. But that's huge, especially for Time Warner, because I personally wasn't comfortable when I saw the AT&T deal.
I actually agree with
I'm
you.
not. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but any way, shape, form, or fashion. But when 6 companies pretty much control all the media and communication, that's concerning.
It is.
Between between the what is it? Pretty much Time Warner / AOL, Disney, Sony, and a couple others. I mean Comcast, and NBC, and that's because ABC's owned by Disney. You don't have that many. ESPN's owned by Disney. Walt Disney owns probably a good quarter of what you're watching, and hearing, and also talking through.
Okay, so we're going to move on here to the next topic, which is actually pretty interesting. Now, I have, I don't know where the information I got came from, because this has been a while coming now, and this is just another topic that's resurfaced again.
Mm-hmm.
But the headline was that Capitalism Cruise, it saves lives as DUIs increase in Austin, Texas since Uber and Lyft departed, right?
Okay.
So what happened was, before Uber came into Austin in 2014, the Austin Police Department's data showed that the city had an average of 525 drunk driving arrests per month. 525.
That's not surprising.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah, but that's not surprising.
When these numbers were revisited a year after the ride-sharing came into Austin, drunk driving arrests had dropped by 5%. I didn't figure out that number. I should have.
Okay.
But this trend continued the following year, when the number of drunk driving arrests dropped by an additional 12%. So you're at 17% at this point, bringing the average number of arrests down to about 438 per month. So in May of 2016, the same month that Uber and Lyft, both car sharing companies most people are familiar with now, you can look them up if you don't know them, made the decision to leave Austin, the monthly rate of drunk driving incidents was down to an average of 358 by that point, down from the original 525. So within the first few months of Uber and Lyft's absence, the number of DUI arrests increased by 7.5% from the previous year, and in the month of July alone last year, the city had 476 drunk driving arrests. Now,
wow.
What I heard through the grapevine at one point in time, and this is just what I heard, I'm not going to say it's fact or anything,
Of course.
but what I had heard was that the main reason there was a push to get rid of Uber and Lyft is because of the amount of revenue that the city takes in from these types of tickets and fines, and that the diminishing of that through these services being around was really taking a toll on the revenue that the city was taking a hit on. And if that's the case, then the question becomes, is tax revenue more important than the lives and safety of its citizens? Well, if that's true.
If that statement is true, that's clearly the message being sent by the city of Austin. I'm not surprised by the high number of DUI arrests.
It's a party city.
It's a party city, and no, every city's a party city. But with the culture of Texas, you're going to have most of your Dallas, San Antonio, Houston people. They're going to be more of the traditional Texas culture, so they're going to be more down to earth. They're more likely to party at home or at a person's house and not actually go from place to place. Austin, different culture there. So I thought Uber and Lyft would be fantastic there.
Right. Yeah.
And
it was obviously working.
It's obviously working.
Yeah.
And that also fits that culture. You could put Austin and California, and they'll perfectly blend. And that's what those were born out of. That would perfectly fit. You would think. How they would prefer to cater or get from place to place, even outside. Just after going out, to get to work every day. You would think that would fit there. I really hope that's not true. I really do, not just from the basic human rights part, but you can't be saving that much more money. The numbers you gave me is about 100 people, about 100 arrests roughly that were cut. It was like five.
What's the average DUI?
I've
never had it.
I've never had it either. 5 something to 4 something. Let's say $50 per DUI.
No.
How much would a DUI actually be?
DUI, first of all, you're getting points.
But points doesn't equal money.
It doesn't equal money.
But you're talking
But
about a fine.
I'm thinking.
Okay, you're right. I'm $50 probably really low. Speeding ticket's like $50. I've never even had that.
At least minimum.
Okay, so $300. You're talking about $3,000. You're kicking out two. Actually, I can't say kick them out. You suggestively force them to leave for $3,000. 300 times 100. That's or was it? No, is it 30,000? I can't do math.
I wanted to make sure before I corrected you, and I.
No, you're right. I'm 4 zeros. 30,000. Even $30,000
per month. 30,000 times 12. I mean, eventually it starts adding up. You're talking about how much do.
No, that was per month.
I don't know.
Those numbers per month.
Per month.
Okay, $3,000 per month. That is significant. That's significant money. No, because $3,000 a month is a lot of money.
You gotta also figure though that beyond
however,
the DUI stuff, there's also speeding tickets have probably gone down as well. You're taking
tickets period are going to go down because you've got less people involving a vehicle. So tickets period are going to go down, whether it's speeding, whether it's moving violations, whatever it is. So that's a fair point. But yeah, that really leans to the fact that money means more than the lives of our citizens. If that, even if we don't say, even if we hadn't heard that through the grapevine, the numbers and the action speak to that. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have made that assumption had I not heard that. I hear two companies that are doing well everywhere else, that people rave about everywhere else, and people can't wait for Lyft to come to our area.
Yeah, I think it
is.
Yeah,
Uber's here. Lyft is. I don't think I know about Lyft, but Uber I know is here. I know Lyft is in Philly. I got friends who can't wait for Uber Eats to come to the Valley, but it's only down in Philly now. Like
Uber Eats?
Uber Eats.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
the food delivery part.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I signed up waiting for the Valley. Same thing. Except I don't got to carry people. I just got to carry food. That's easy. It's easy. Yeah. So you have these companies thriving around the country, and you have them leave, and you push them out the door.
What's the reason? So I can't be far off the mark.
No, there's no way. Unless, and I can imagine why, because if there's something problematic with these companies, other cities would be taking the same action, and they're not. So you're telling me that $30,000 a month, is worth more than your people. Yeah. I don't know how many DUI-related deaths they have, so they figure maybe we only have 5 a year, or 5 a month, so that's no big deal, but if New York City, who's probably saving 5 times the numbers that they're saving when it comes to that they're not getting when it comes to that revenue we're drunk driving, or LA. Actually, LA is probably a better example because of the cabs all over New York. But LA is a town where people drive everywhere. Yeah. For 3-4 hours. On that horrific. But I'm having bad flashbacks of driving in LA. I didn't get a chance to.
Oh, go ahead and do it while I get on to the next stop.
You realize there's like no signal in this town.
Well, do you need my Wi-Fi?
Yeah, because that says no service, my friend.
Okay, unlock that while I do this. So. Here, why don't you do this?
Oh, I get to look at the paper.
So we're going to talk about Rand Paul right there.
Oh, my favorite person.
Do you like Rand Paul?
No, I'm being facetious. I don't dislike Rand Paul, but I'm being facetious. All right, so Rand Paul has reintroduced the Federal Reserve Transparency Act. Did not hear about that. For another attempt at auditing the Fed. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has been attempting to push an audit of the Federal Reserve for some time. And he did mention in a piece last January for Time that he considered the Reserve's meddling in the free market unchecked and arguably unconstitutional. Now, with more Republican support and reportedly the support of President-elect Trump, he's introduced the Federal Reserve Transparency Act. Thank you, sir.
You can find it and share it then. Because I didn't see it.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm not used to Apple, sorry.
I know.
So Rand Paul happens, I'm a little opposite than you. Rand Paul happens to be one of my favorite congressmen because he is a libertarian. And I think a lot of the issues that he takes up and holds close to his heart is, things like this. I mean, he's been fighting for the Fed to be audited for quite some time, and with Republicans controlling everything right now, and a seemingly supportive president-elect coming into the White House, now seems to be the perfect time, and he has reintroduced this bill. To go along with that, we also have Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis, who have officially proposed one of my favorite legislations, term limits in the amendment. So what we have is Cruz has announced on Facebook saying, with control of a decisive majority of the states, the House of Representatives and the Senate, we have a responsibility to answer the voters' call to action, and we must deliver. It is well past time to put an end to the cronyism and deceit that has transformed Washington into a graveyard of good intentions. I want to get to that then, because I want to hear your thoughts on something else.
Okay.
The racial stuff that we talk about and how that's connected to this, I believe. The proposed constitutional amendment specifies that senators can only serve 2 6-year terms, while House representatives would be allowed to 2 3-year terms. It also states that the term limits would not begin until the bill becomes law, so the clock for current lawmakers wouldn't start until re-election, which unfortunately means that Nancy Pelosi has the opportunity to stand there even longer and screw things over. So here, I want to go back to this. I think this is the perfect way of saying this. It is well past time to put an end to the cronyism and deceit that has transformed Washington into a graveyard of good intentions. So I want your thoughts on this.
Okay.
I believe that we have had the switch over from when Black Americans went from voting Republican because it was the Republicans that helped with the Civil Rights Act and everything else.
Yes.
To voting purely for Democrats. It over the decades since then, all this changeover, what we have seen is this constant promising of all this equality that has never come to fruition over the course of decades. They have not delivered on anything.
Right.
Nothing.
Virtually
and
nothing.
To talk about a graveyard of good intentions, that fits the bill right there for me. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
because these people aren't held accountable. They make all these promises.
They're
they
not
go through their term. They don't deliver anything, and then at the end of it, they say, "Hey, by the way, we still are promising this. I just need some more time."
Just more time. Yeah,
it's so ridiculous.
It's been the continued. We need more time. We need more time. We need more time. I can't even call it a graveyard of good intentions anymore because I really don't feel that there's many good intentions in Washington.
It's self-serving politics.
It is completely self-serving politics. I am a huge advocate for term limits. I can't say off the top of my head what I think the term limit should be, because I definitely understand if you had a person that the people believed in and continued to want to see there, that makes sense. However, term limits, I think, only part of the problem.
Sure.
I think term limits and also making it easier for the common man to be more involved in trying to get to that position, because
someone like the course of action that Scott Brown went through up in Massachusetts.
Okay, exactly.
I mean, not having that money, traveling around in his rusted-out truck, actually making it to Congress.
Exactly, because most people can't do that, and for him, I mean, obviously, he can't go to work and do that. If you and I wanted to run for office, it'd be virtually impossible because we have families to take care of, and then to campaign on top of that, to go places, have speeches, have meetings, meet with business owners, meet with local leaders. Who has the time for all that?
Right.
It's virtually impossible. Yeah. So unless you're bought by somebody, being backed by somebody, you don't have that opportunity.
Right.
So to make it easier, and I think with technology, we have the opportunity to tweak some of those rules and options so that, yes, you have a term limit. Let's say, depending upon what branch obviously going for, let's say, 10 years off the top of my head. Let's say, 10 years is the longest you can serve. But 2 years term for senators, right?
I'm sorry?
Senators have a 2-year term.
No, 6.
6-year term.
So that's 12 years total.
Oh, 12. Okay, so 12 years. Let's say 2 terms for the Senate.
I think that's enough.
And then the House of Reps, I think, is every 2 years.
Yes.
Okay. That's right.
So
I
think maybe, I would say up to 4. 8 years.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
I think so too.
In this case, it's 2, I believe they said. Oh no, I'm sorry. House of Representatives, they're 3-year terms.
Okay.
So 2 of those, so 6.
So 6.
I would be okay with 3.
I would be okay with 3. I would be actually, if someone 12 years actually isn't that long of a time. I would actually be cool with 12-year max on both. So 4 terms for the House and then 2 terms in the Senate. I'm going to be totally okay with that.
Yeah. Well, one of the people, like I mentioned about Nancy Pelosi, I don't know if you caught this, I believe it was last year or the year before, but a reporter actually went up to her in a press conference and said, Nancy, don't you think that it's time to refresh Congress with some new blood, new fresh ideas and everything? She was so offended by that, because they were basically saying you're old and stale. Is at least the way that she took it,
Which is
understandable.
understandable.
If you're getting plastic surgery where, the cheekbones right here, skin is now in the back of your head. I mean, come on. So she shouldn't be taking offense. She should be taking a hint,
Yeah, I understand where she'd be coming from. I'd probably, if I was in her shoes, I'd probably take that as offensive as well. But
she has to also understand,
but you understand
times change.
Well, not just times change. Because times change, but just because you're old doesn't mean you can't be effective as times change. But when you're old and you're not effective, then people definitely don't want you around. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
And that could be said across the board for party lines.
Absolutely. John McCain, Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, exactly.
I can go off on my side as well, which I don't even consider my side because I don't align myself with Republicans at all. I don't consider myself a Republican.
I'm a Republican only by registration.
Right.
I consider myself conservative above all,
Yep.
before any particular label, quote unquote.
So we're going to actually stick with that. Ted Cruz actually made the news twice.
Oh, really?
In 2 days. He pushed to have the U.S. Embassy in Israel moved to Jerusalem. He said that, it says here that the Congress passed legislation back in 1995 that called for moving the embassy to Jerusalem, but Democratic and Republican administrations alike have declined to enact the change, citing security concerns. The latest measure, introduced on Tuesday as the new Congress convened, would withhold funding from the State Department until it makes the move. He said, Jerusalem is the eternal and undivided capital of Israel. Unfortunately, the Obama administration's vendetta against the Jewish state has been so vicious that to even utter this simple truth, let alone the reality that Jerusalem is the appropriate venue for the American embassy in Israel, is shocking in some circles. But it is finally time to cut through the doublespeak and broken promises to do what Congress said we should do back in 1995, formally move our embassy to the capital of our great ally, Israel. So what I want to kind of touch upon here real quick is the fact that President Obama specifically, and I believe his whole administration, have been absolutely disgustingly horrendous towards Israel. I mean, there's a case where Netanyahu actually came over on a plane for a meeting with President Obama, and he got to the White House and was told by security detail there that the president had decided to go out to dinner with his family instead.
Wow, that's ballsy.
I mean, you're talking about foreign leaders here. You're talking about a speck of hope in what is surrounded by either potential enemies or avowed enemies. Right?
Surrounded by enemies pretty much on all sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have just, we've gotten into bed with the wrong countries, and we have pushed our allies out of the way. And, as soon as President-elect Donald Trump was elected, you had Netanyahu and Putin, of all people, and all these other foreign leaders congratulating him and saying, we look forward to renewed negotiations and less tension and everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, the days after this election really spotlighted the issue on Obama just being horrible with our allies.
His foreign policies have been a travesty, for sure. Wow. Well, this from Cruz, I understand his point because of the fact that this, back in '95, which would be during the Clinton administration, was set in stone. However, I should say set in place to move forward. My question is it makes sense?
It's symbolic.
But it's symbolic. But it doesn't seem necessary. Because as long as we treat them properly, is it worth the money to move it? Is it needed? I just don't see how that's needed.
I honestly think Israel might help with that. I don't know.
They probably would. So my thing is it that big of a deal? Is it going to cost us a couple $1 million to move this embassy? It is. I wouldn't do it.
Here's what I would say to that. I think that...
And also, why didn't President Bush move it? I mean,
I haven't had a good president in office my whole life. You know what I mean? I'm not going to stick up for Bush at all.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, I don't feel like this could be. I understand the point. I just don't feel like this is something that's even worth Senator Cruz's breath. Let President-elect Trump come into office. Let him hit some of the more things that hit home here first. As long as our allies are back at the table to talk, that's the first step that we need. Let's smooth out the problems that we have before we worry about moving buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's where I was going with this. Is I believe if you've been paying attention to the last, I think it was within a couple of weeks, the decision by the UN, I believe it was, to move the settlements back from the Gaza Strip and everything.
Yes,
I mean, this all, what it comes down to is symbolism, and I really do believe that. But I think it's powerful symbolism. I think that I believe that Israel has been losing battles to maintain their land and the monuments, I guess you could say, or the places of interest that define their culture and their state. And you just have enemies on all sides that keep on encroaching in, and they don't have any backup. I mean, it's literally, like you said, on all sides of them. Yeah. And they go for help from people or countries like us, and we brush them off.
Right.
They have no support outside of that, and they're being squeezed out of everything. You know? Now, a lot of people in those areas, or some people even here in our country, would say that, you know, the whole land arrangement and everything with all that, you know, the land, all this Palestinians, and that they're owed certain portions of the land and everything. If you're watching right now on Facebook Live, I'm not going to be able to show it, but I am adding more media into my videos and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to throw up a map here on the YouTube video, which will actually show where Jerusalem is and the surrounding Muslim nations around it. And when you actually take a look at that, to say that you can't allow that settlement there in the Gaza Strip, I mean, you would have to look at this map that I'm showing right now in the case of the YouTube video and justify that somehow. I mean, it would be absolutely ridiculous.
Well, you know, I mean, we know they've been fighting, you know, for thousands and thousands of years over that land. We owe our allies to support them, and especially with Israel, they have supported us through thick and thin. And it's tough for them because you mentioned the encroachment, but that's pretty much as the other countries will do, because, you know, when you look at history, look at the track record, Israel is undefeated in their war. So no one wants to truly fully engage. And also, they also do not want to wake the sleeping giant. And depending upon who's running, you know, things politically here.
Or the Great White Devil, as we're also called.
I see. That doesn't apply to me.
Oh, you're after them. Oh, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Over there.
Like Dave Chappelle on the airplane.
Yep, exactly. Oh, you're clearly not here from me.
Yeah.
No. Oh, right. Yeah. Oh. No, I wouldn't let my white friends get shot or anything like that. I would do all I can to defend them. Especially this one.
Fast. Okay, so we've gone for quite a while with everything, which is great. When we can actually open up in conversations and everything, I really like that. But we're going to actually have to kind of switch over and skip some things. One of the articles, if you want to check it out on my Facebook page, again, if you're just tuning in, it's the Generation Y Conservative podcast right now. You can find me on my Facebook page, the Generation Y Conservative. You can also find me on YouTube, the Generation Y Conservative. On Twitter, it's at Gen Y Conservative without the E on the end. And we are in the midst right now of getting onto Google Play and iTunes for these podcasts to be audio only for you to subscribe to. If you go to my Facebook page and scroll through the last week of articles, you'll actually come across this article in regards to a murder case where a guy had another guy drown, possible murder in a jacuzzi or hot tub, and police are trying to seize recordings from the Amazon Alexa in the house itself, because there may be some evidence of foul play of recordings on that. But Amazon is actually fighting this right now because it's an encroachment of privacy of the individual and everything. And this is kind of the the line that we're towing right now of where does your privacy end, and what role does not only technology play in your life and in regards to policy and privacy, but also where is the line drawn for law, for the law enforcement officers and the courts and everything to actually use that technology. And I think that's a whole other topic we can get into, especially as tech geeks ourselves and everything. So maybe we'll save that for another time. But it's an interesting story, so I would encourage you to go and check that out. So one of the best reasons that I have Matt here tonight is because we often get into debates and or discussions on race relations here in the United States, and I think it's a conversation that's lacking because I think people are too afraid on both sides to bring it up.
I wouldn't say on both sides. I wouldn't say that. I would say the left is clearly.
Oh no, I'm talking about racially. No.
No.
Okay.
I would say it depends upon where you are. I would say it's more culturally where you live compared to across the board. But because you'll have some people that are more than willing to engage.
But engagement is not always a good engagement either.
This is true.
Right.
But it's tougher for you and for all fellow Caucasians in this country, because now if you say anything contrary to the narrative, you are automatically branded a racist, and that's tough. That's a tough position to come from, because people are automatically putting that label on you, and then you automatically have to come back from a point of defense where you shouldn't have to, where you should at least be able to come from an even ground. So it's difficult, and it's also difficult for people of color. I'm not going to just specify those of African descent, but people of color, period. Those dark Hispanics, light Hispanics, Asians, those from India, Pakistan, East India area there, and also Native Americans, which I'm proud to be of my Native American culture and history. It's really, honestly, it's a trust thing. I can have racial conversations with a lot of my friends because I trust them, and we have, like you and I, we have a relationship that's spanning almost 20 years now. Actually longer than that. Actually, no. I mean, we met in '96, so over 20 years now. Yeah. So when you have that type of relationship, you can talk earnestly and listen and disagree as we sometimes do, and still be able to respect each other's position, because I could never walk in your shoes, nor could you walk in mine.
It has never gotten heated between us.
I wouldn't say it's gotten
heated. Well,
no,
I mean, like where you're pissed off at. I'm pissed off at you for the way you feel.
Right. No. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's never been heated at all. No. And that's again, if you came at me and someone come out the street and got in my face about some things, then that may be different. Like, y'all, you don't know me. You don't be talking to me like that. Like, you know me, you don't know me. And I've gotten that with several, of my black brothers and sisters coming at me out of nowhere, wanting to talk about things that they really didn't want to talk to me about. And I would give them fair warning, and just don't come at me like that. You don't know me. If you know me, we can sit down and have a conversation. I'll have that conversation with family members of mine who differ on points of view in our history, not in our history, but in the treatment in the current landscape, and I'll take heat from them. Okay. But so I'll take heat from you, and we're still all good.
So we actually had three. I came across three really good topics this week.
Okay.
That deal with racial issues here in America. Obviously, we'll hit the Chicago incident last because that was a very big thing. Wow. But there were two other incidents as well. Okay. So let's just start off with this one, because I think this one's fast. Just we'll give brief opinions on this, I think, and kind of move on from, I think, both of these, because they are what they are.
Okay.
So KKK members claim that A&E producers paid them to fake scenes in their documentary. So members of the KKK claim that they faked the documentary. Some members said that they were presented with fictional story scenarios. Richard Nichols, who was one of the featured members of the series from Tennessee, told Variety that the production team even paid for the construction of wooden crosses and Nazi swastikas. It was all made up. Pretty much everything we said and did was fake, and because that is what the film... I'm sorry. And... okay, pretty much everything we said and did was fake, and because that is what the film people told us to do and say. In the interview with Variety, Nichols said that he was being filmed and used the word blacks, but then the producer interrupted him and said, no, we want him to use the word, obviously you know what the word is. And they were reportedly told what to say on camera at a given moment. The 8-part series Generation KKK was canceled by the network last week, and the show followed the Klan members in Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. The documentary was canceled after A&E learned that Klan members were paid. So it turns out that they were paid. My opinion on this is everything about this story is absolutely ridiculous. Oh. I mean, first of all, for A&E to believe that they actually have to pay to get some controversial stuff out of these people is one thing. The fact that these KKK members are coming off in this victimhood mentality right now is absolutely disturbing. The fact that the whole thing was canceled because people were paid. What reality TV show anymore isn't scripted?
And everyone's paid.
I mean, it's so...
There's no such thing as a reality TV show where the people are not paid.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Everyone's paid. Everyone signs off on a release. They have to release almost every YouTube video out there where someone in the street they pull a prank on them. Those people sign a release.
Yeah.
Like it's not live. It's not genuine. And yeah, I mean you. Come on. Am I supposed to really react to this?
No,
like, really? The KKK wants to be the victims?
I know,
okay.
Right. That's the biggest point of this story.
Yeah, not going to be able to do it. Yep.
Okay, so here's something that is pretty serious.
Wow.
And
only in America.
This one's actually really disturbing. This kind of goes along with this whole Chicago incident in that it's disturbing, it's sick, it's just really sad, the circumstances around this. But the racist Charleston butcher, Dylan Roof, who was involved in the church shooting down in Charleston. This is a kid who eventually they found all these racist videos and letters and everything that he wrote. But what this guy did, I mean, it's bone chilling, really. I mean, he goes into this church group of, was it all black individuals?
Yes. I believe so.
And how many people were involved? 9?
I believe he killed 9 people.
And he sits there in this church meeting, and they're having this
open discussion. It was a Bible study.
It was a Bible study. They're having this open discussion. He sat there through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. This isn't an incident where this psychopath just walked into a church and started spraying out fire and everything like that. What actually happened with this is he sat there, and he literally said after the incident, I almost didn't go through with it because these people were so nice.
Yeah.
And instead, he hauls off and shoots everyone. Okay? And so in the weeks following his massacre, Roof wrote in a jailhouse journal, I do not regret what I did. I am not sorry. I have not shed a tear for the innocent people I killed. I do feel sorry for the innocent white children forced to live in this sick country, and I do feel sorry for the innocent white people that are killed daily at the hands of the lower race. I have shed a tear of self-pity for myself. I feel pity that I had to do what I did in the first place. I feel pity that I had to give up my life because of a situation that could never or should never have existed. I have no choice. I am not in the position to, alone, go into the ghetto and fight. I chose Charleston because it is the most historic city in the state, and at one time had the highest ratio of blacks to whites in the country. We have no skinheads, no real KKK, no one doing anything but talking on the internet. Well, someone has to have the bravery to take it to the real world, and I guess that has to be me. I mean, that's kind of his manifesto type thing right there. And
yeah.
He just... The whole incident. I mean, from start to end.
It's very reminiscent of... You ever see the movie Higher Learning?
been a while, yeah.
Okay. It very much reminds me of Michael Rappaport's character in Higher Learning, where, if you recall, he befriends Omar Epps' character.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up becoming, a skinhead pretty much just due to peer pressure and lack of friends, and ends up sniping at Omar Epps only to kill Tyra Banks. And God, how do you shoot Tyra Banks? But, and then he dies in the aftermath, and his skinhead buddies are like, "That's freaking white power, man," and but it's just that has that similar manifesto, has that similar feel to it. People have had those feelings, and unfortunately, it's just not fading away. You're getting more people like him, more bold, coming out and expressing, that sentiment. It's just disgusting, and the fact that he went there and, like you said, he went there and didn't start just spraying on people. It wasn't a Columbine type thing where he just started, "All right, I'm gonna start busting caps at everybody." He went in there, they talked to him. He sat in the Bible study. From my understanding, they sat there, they prayed with him. They asked him about problems he was having, and there was there was engagement.
So nice.
Yes,
he said that.
Yeah. And and yet he still ruthlessly gunned them down. It's sad. The fact that he has no remorse, and then this is a hate crime. This is a hate crime on a terrorist type level. I mean, this guy he needs to be put away. The fact.
No, he's getting the death penalty.
In South, he needs to be put away. This needs to be done, and it's sad, but for me, I've always said this. When it comes to race relations, I would rather be in the South most of the time, because at least I know that they don't like me. They make it abundantly clear. They'll fly their Confederate flags, and they'll have their stuff. They make it abundantly clear that you're not welcome. So I won't walk into their establishment. I won't knock on their door and say hello if I'm moving. I make it clear that I'm not welcome. Up here, up north, it's a little different. Obviously not right, but I'd rather know where the enemy is than to have to worry about the enemy smiling in my face.
And I think that goes across for. I feel the same way about other things than race, right? I feel like if someone doesn't like me for a certain reason, I would rather just know it.
Yeah.
Than
and keep it moving.
Believe that there's a knife being slowly jammed into the back of
my
back.
If you don't like me, don't engage, don't act, don't pretend.
Just tell it to my face.
Yeah. Don't fake it. Just be real with it. You don't like me? Cool. We got nothing to say that.
I wasted each other's time.
Exactly. And with race relations in this country, for something like that, and you mentioned briefly the Chicago incident.
Well, we'll get to that right now.
Oh, we're gonna get to that now?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because this is I'll be honest with you, we have a lot to cover on the Chicago incident. This is the topic of the night that will basically end the night, and it's going to be a long discussion anyway, so it's not like we're nearing the end. There's just so much involved that goes into this. So Trump just got done. This actually leads into it. This is another story that leads into this. Trump blasted Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel on Twitter for the record-setting 762 homicides and 4,331 shooting victims in 2016, and says he must ask for federal help if he can't fix the Windy City. One of the most violent years in Chicago history ended with those 762 homicides, the most in 2 decades of this city, which, by the way, is a gun-free zone city. Chicago murder rate is record-setting with the 4,331 shooting victims, 762 murders. He tweeted on Monday and he said to Rahm Emanuel, if he can't do anything, he has to ask for federal help. Rahm and Trump actually did meet back on December 7th in New York City, but reportedly only talked about illegal immigrants or dreamers, not gun violence. The nation's third largest city also saw 1,100 more shooting incidents last year than it did in 2015. Not 1,100 total, 1,100 more incidents than the year before. The increase in homicides compared to 2015, when 485 were reported, is the largest spike in 60 years. And this all comes, of course, days before the most recent incident that has made the news. And that is that 4 people are now being charged with a hate crime after a man was tortured and shown on Facebook Live video. So 4 people were charged Thursday in Chicago with a hate crime after Facebook Live video showed a young man being tied up, assaulted, and threatened as assailants yelled obscenities about Donald Trump. Jordan Hill, 18, Cooper, 18, Brittany Covington, 18, Tanisha Covington, 23, were all charged with aggravated kidnapping, hate crime, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, according to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. In the video posted online Tuesday, a young white man identified as 18-year-old Austin Hilborn is seen restrained, his mouth covered with duct tape as he sits on the ground. A young black man holding a knife also cuts his clothing and his scalp. I believe he was cutting his hair with it and actually ended up scalping him a little bit, not full on. He said, F Donald Trump, F white people. The police superintendent, Eddie Johnson, said the treatment of the young man, who he described as having mental health challenges, was disturbing. So the mental health challenges was the victim in this case. In this video, it also showed him being forced to drink from a toilet as well. So let's go back on this. So what actually ended up happening was these 4 individuals took this guy who was obviously had some mental health challenges. They don't specifically say what. And the one kid...
I'm assuming these are all like high school students from these ages.
3 of them are 18. 1 is 23. Okay. It was Jordan Hill, I believe, one of the 18-year-olds that actually knew this kid.
Okay.
And they took him for 48 hours.
Oh my goodness.
This wasn't a case of like a kind of afternoon torture or anything. This was over the course of 48 hours. Police were trying to find where this was happening. And what ended up happening was we have a case where these kids started assaulting this kid and doing all these things to him, and at the same time are doing exactly what we're doing right now with Facebook Live and streaming their torture and this stuff online for everyone to see. At one point, it was either the sister of the girl or the girl's babysitter or something said, y'all, this isn't funny. Like, this is not funny. Like, what are you doing? You know? And the kids laughed at it, like, thinking that this was some sort of big joke or something. You know? And before we even start talking about racial relations, I have a question for you that I've posed to people, okay?
Okay.
If I were to tell you, somewhere in the world right now, there is a group of people that have kidnapped someone, are torturing them, and streaming it live on video to show the world and make an example of that person, what would you immediately think of?
Kidnap someone, streaming it live to show the person, to show the world.
Where do these tactics come from? It's terrorists that we see doing this stuff.
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, recently, that is, especially the streaming it, the showing it, the recording it, the streaming it. That only relatable, I would say, would be the ISIS beheadings that they streamed.
Right.
I mean, this is.
But thank God it didn't go that far.
Right. Yes. Thank God this kid's okay. And this is. I mean, it's a kidnapping, which brings an FBI level into it most of the time. So it's already a federal issue, which again, right there on the borderline of terrorism. And then you've got the abuse, the cutting, the drinking on the toilet, the verbal abuse, / mental abuse, being restrained against his will. There's no defense for that. There's no rhyme. There's no reason. This person didn't do. Even if this person did something to them, there's no reason for that. It's purely a terroristic thing. I had not heard all those details to that extreme. So thank you for sharing that. And it's just a disgusting situation. It really is. This is by far one of the worst. Especially for that age group, attacks I've heard of it in recent years.
By the way, I realized that my screen went out and back here, so my logo is no longer showing up. But we're gonna get into some other details on this case anyway, because Sean King, who, I mean, is he the leader of Black Lives Matter, or like
no,
one of the like he's the voice?
He's a voice box,
right? Okay, so he got involved with this and had some things to say. He's popular because of his role in Black Lives Matter as a mouthpiece, basically. He said, hate crimes are on the rise from coast to coast. Our incoming president of the United States admitted that he sexually assaults women. Women all over the country have come forward to allegedly confirm it. His first wife, in a sworn deposition, said that he raped and brutally assaulted her. Ivana Trump later said she didn't want the allegation to be considered in a literal or criminal sense. This country is sick. This country does not need me to speak out on crimes committed by black folk, because nobody in this country is held more responsible for the crimes they commit, and even the crimes they don't commit, than black folk in America. I speak out on injustice. What happened to this man in Chicago was terrible. It was criminal. I hate it. But guess what? Justice was swift. It was miraculously swift. Justice is always swift and easy when black folk mess up. But you know who's not in jail right now? George Zimmerman. You know who's not in jail right now? The officers who fired 41 shots at and killed Diallo, I think is how you say his last name, on the doorstep of his Bronx home. You know who's not in jail right now? The officers who killed Eric Gardner and Rakia Boyd. We march for them. We protest for them. I write about them on Facebook and tweet about them, because justice has not been served in those cases. It almost never is. Black folk are held super responsible for every mistake and criminal offense made. We rarely have to march for justice in our communities. American prisons are full of black folk who are being held responsible for every mistake they've ever made. Now, the interesting thing about this is he got some flack from his own people and followers on Facebook and Twitter, because they were saying, you're basically, the one woman outright said, you're basically saying that this mentally disabled kid's life doesn't really matter to you. You know?
Yeah.
Because you're going at this like, I think I'm not going to blame liberals for this or this movement at all. Because,
well, you can't blame Black Lives Matter for
What
it.
I'm saying, though, is the mentality of when something happens, you bring up other people and the injustices to other people, and you don't specifically address that case. This is a problem all over the place. And,
right.
and my party, the politics or race, that always comes into play, right? I mean, on no matter who's talking about an incident, if you're trying to be held responsible for responding to an incident, you will almost more than likely end up hearing those people saying, well, okay, you want me to respond to this, but what about all these cases that we're not talking about those cases? Right. And that's what needs to be said in all these conversations. No matter what injustices are going on out there, we're focusing on this case right now.
Right.
And true or not, one of the trending topics at the time was that Black Lives Matter was involved in this incident in some sort of way, whether it was rhetoric or something else. I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that either. Without proof, I wouldn't.
Exactly.
Even,
and it's wrong for people to get involved in saying that they're involved in that. Unless, of course, you're looking at these kids' social media and they're saying that they're doing it because they are part of this movement or something. But I haven't seen that yet.
That's like saying that, you know, every bad, poor action or mistake made by someone back in the 60s from the Nation of Islam was directly related to something that Elijah Muhammad said, or something that Malcolm X said, or something else higher in their leadership. You can't always attribute everything to them, because that's like saying that's just like saying if you went out and, you know, committed a crime. Oh, okay, well, they say, well, who's Chris's leader? Oh, his pastor. Also, his pastor must be partially responsible for that, you know, because he speaks into his life.
Here's where I'm going to disagree with you. I just got into this conversation the other day, is specifically about Black Lives Matter,
okay,
and about the assassinations of cops and stuff like that, and that happened in Dallas just within the last couple months. Or how long ago was it?
It's been within a year. It's been too soon to say that way.
Yeah, but you know, the fact that the leadership in Black Lives Matter is not saying these things, not calling for the assassination of police officers, but the people that did it in the name of that movement. And there wasn't that much of a reaction from the leadership or people like Sean King saying, listen, this is not what the movement is about. We condemn the actions of these individuals, and you need to back off and stop doing this if you believe that this is the right thing, because you're shedding a bad light on the Black Lives Matter movement. Because I have looked on Sean King's website and the goals set forth, or how do you want to say it, as far as what they're trying to achieve through this movement. Less incarceration for blacks. I watched that. Was it 13th? You told me 13th. You told me to watch that. I watched that. I thought that was fascinating. It's about the incarceration rates of the black community. It's about being held unequally in crimes and sought after. Those
are all factual statements.
Yes, Bill Clinton signed. What was the act?
Oh, you're talking about the crime bill, the 94 crime bill.
Yeah, exactly.
3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his administration, and Hillary had a big part in that, apparently.
Huge. She was huge in pushing that.
What led to the mass incarceration of the black American citizens?
It put it on steroids.
Right.
Because you had the war on drugs kind of started that off. You kind of started off pretty much actually in the Nixon administration into Carter, when she got worse, and then got a little worse under Reagan, got a little worse under Bush Sr., and then President Clinton injected steroids into it, and that's when Hillary, gave her infamous, speech about young black men, which of course I was at that time, young teenager being super predators, and that we must be brought to heel.
She said that, and no one recognized that. Was not brought up at all this election cycle.
Oh, it was, but not by many people. And actually, it was actually. Well, on major news, of course not. But most people of our range and then younger are also being cognizant to not just look at the major news sources. I think the Young Turks actually released a piece specifically on the Clintons and their history.
Not surprising.
And they were what's his name? C-N-K. The main guy. I can't say I'm a fan, but when I watched this video, he said, look, I had no idea it was this bad. I had no idea she said this. I had no idea of their history. They even showed a video where Hillary was speaking at some type of event, and a young black girl was standing there holding a sign about the super predator comment, and she had security shove this girl out like that's a child.
There was another incident backstage in one of her events where a black man approached her and started asking her questions, and she condescendingly went after him and told him that he was absolutely wrong and told him to shut up. Basically, I mean, it was horrible.
Wow.
But here's something to go off. We're going to keep on talking about this. Trust me. There's so many layers that go into this whole Chicago story. Of all people, I have been shocked this week. There are 2 stories that were written by Piers Morgan. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I know Piers Morgan.
Liberal.
Does he even have a job? Okay, I digress. Continue.
Barely. Kind of like Keith Olbermann. Who the last time I went after publicly had all of his followers go after me.
Didn't ESPN fire him too?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Good job, ESPN.
Like some sort of internet show or something.
Okay, like us. All right, that's cool. Yeah. That's where he belongs.
Something like that. He can continue flipping out about his ketchup packets on the train in the meantime. Anyway, so Piers Morgan, who is a liberal mouthpiece and has just been his head so far up the liberal pipeline, is the best way of putting it, for so many years now, that he has written 2 stories this week that blew my mind. And it's so good. So good.
I can't believe I'm hearing you say so good.
So good
associated
that I
with
had
Piers
to
Morgan.
I'm going to read a majority of what he said in regards to this case and President Obama after this, from the article that he himself wrote. It's not going to cover everything, but I copied and pasted so much of it just to read to you because it amazed me so much. So here is Piers Morgan's take on this incident in Chicago.
Okay.
He said that this short piece of film I endured depicts a gang of 4 black teenage thugs, 2 male, 2 female, abusing and torturing a poor, terrified young white man with special needs. These smirking scumbags tie him up, gag him, kick him, punch him, scalp him by viciously slashing his hair with a knife and flicking burned cigarette ash on the head wounds they inflict in the process. I forgot about that part.
Oh, my God.
They laugh, they jeer, then one of them shouts, F Donald Trump, the N-word, F white people. Another urges the victim to say, I love black people, and then they force him at knife point to say F Donald Trump. This was not a quick, spontaneous assault. The victim is believed to have been held for up to 48 hours. The live Facebook stream itself goes on for more than 30 minutes. Kiss the floor, B-I-T-C-H, the attackers howl. Then they shove his face into a toilet bowl. Their goal is to utterly humiliate him, self-evidently, from their own mouths because he's white. Yet police in Chicago, where the attack happened, are currently refusing to say they are treating this as a racially or politically motivated hate crime. Are you bloody kidding me? First, these are absolutely not kids. They are all 18 years old and older. Second, what they did wasn't just stupidity, it was premeditated torture of a horrendous nature. Imagine watching a video of this black man's... Imagine watching a video of this black man's horrific ordeal streamed live on Facebook, if the circumstances were switched. Imagine seeing and hearing the white assailant systematically torment their black victim physically and mentally. Imagine watching them kicking him, punching him, scalping him, and flicking burned cigarette ashes on the wounds they inflict with this vicious and sustained assault. Imagine hearing one of them shouting, "F Barack Obama, F black people," as they did so. Then imagine the video of all this emerging and hitting TV screens and news websites across America. All hell would rightly have broken loose. There would have been instant, huge protests and probably riots. The Black Lives Matter group would have lit up social media demanding justice. Black celebrities led by the likes of Beyonce and John Legend would have made statements expressing their fury at the incident and their solidarity with the victim. Police, under the huge pressure of such concerted public outrage, would have undoubtedly confirmed this as a hate crime. Yet, as I write this, I don't see any protests, riots, social media campaigns, or celebrity statements. I don't even see the police having the guts to call this attack what it is. Next Tuesday, President Obama will deliver his farewell address to the American people. He's chosen his hometown of Chicago as the venue for his final words. Obama says he wants to change this country for the better. Obama says he wants to use his speech to say thank you for the amazing journey, to celebrate the ways you've changed the country for the better these 8 years. Spare me the self-righteous congratulatory claptrap, Mr. President. You've done absolutely nothing to stem America's appalling culture of gun violence that claims 32,000 lives a year. Even more damningly, for the country's first black president, you've done nothing to reduce racial divisions. In fact, those divisions are getting wider and worse, not better. Chicago, your hometown, is a terrible, towering monument to your twin failures with guns and race.
Wow. That's a mouthful there, Mr. Morgan. Well, okay. Wow. Let me say this. I don't disagree with anything that Mr. Morgan says there. I don't disagree at all. It's a horrific, disgusting act, and I truly hope that, regardless of race, color, creed, whatever, that people acknowledge what this is. I heard Don Lemon couldn't say it himself.
Yep.
This is exactly what it is. It was a hate crime. It was racially motivated, clearly, and there's no debate about that because they recorded it. This isn't hearsay. They provided the evidence.
Yeah.
So for anyone willingly to deny that this was racially motivated is just living in self-deceit, and period. They just wanted to be self-deceived. I will say this, and there's no condoning in any way, shape, form, or fashion. This is not unique.
No.
And this is the sort of thing that's happened to black people forever, that we've been saying has been happening, that white people tend to say it's not happening. And gloss over and completely ignore. People like to talk about the riots, and I don't agree with rioting in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's especially when we destroy our own communities. That makes
I don't
sense.
think that's the movement. I won't say that that's part of that movement.
No, I'm not. I'm not even associating that. But
those are people that take advantage of a situation.
Correct, and the rioting is terrible. But people act like white people didn't riot and have race riots. There were race riots. People don't want to talk about that. And people will act like it was so far long ago. It wasn't that long ago. My parents were alive. Mm-hmm. My grandparents were alive. A lot of your parents and grandparents were alive during that time frame. We're not talking about the 1800s. We're talking about 50, 60 years ago max. People think, oh, the civil rights era was us during the 60s. It did not end in the 60s. It started in the late 50s and pretty much just continues. It hasn't ever ended.
Okay, I want to jump into a different point of this conversation, though,
Okay.
and discuss something a little bit different. I'm really interested in your thoughts on this because this is something I was thinking about all day and anticipating your being here to be able to discuss this with me. I have a problem with there being a different level of punishment for hate crimes. Okay? And the reason why I say that is because let's say the victim in a case is killed.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to care whether it was because of a hate crime or what you would consider like a regular crime or something like that? And beyond that, if this is a course of action that we're going to take, why don't we take the harshest punishment of what would be considered for a hate crime and apply to all crimes of a similar nature? You know what I mean? I don't understand why it should be different in any way. Because a crime is a crime, the action and end results are the same. At what point I don't really understand what else you're trying to accomplish.
The hate crime term, for me, is strictly descriptive. Because if you commit a hate crime, what are you doing? It can be anything. It can be assault. It can be verbal assault. It can be harassment. It can be bullying. It could be a myriad of different things.
Yeah.
So I don't personally believe that there should be a separate level of punishment for hate crime. I think that the levels should be as they are. So if it was me and you, and I did something to you, that's one thing. If I do something on a grander terroristic level scale, like Dylan Roof, then that's something different. That should be treated not due to a race motivation, but the scale of the heinous act.
So am I hearing right that you agree with me that maybe the extent of the law should be leveled at what the hate crime is leveled at?
I don't even think the phrase hate crime should be.
Well, no. What I'm saying is you get rid of that terminology, right?
No, you don't have to get rid of the terminology.
The level of the punishment should be at that.
The punishment should just be what it is. So if I racially murder you, I should be tried for murder, not hate murder.
Right. Because what the hell is the difference?
Because there is
the person is dead.
The motivation doesn't make a difference.
No, it doesn't.
Now
you're absolutely right. That's the best way to put it.
It doesn't make a difference whatever the motivation was. If someone's motivated to kill because someone was Muslim, it's still you murdered a Muslim, you go down.
Yeah.
You murdered a black man, a white man. You murdered a kid because it was a kid. You murdered, you murdered Carrot Top. He's a redhead. It's murder. Period. You're going down for murder. It's not,
In that case, it's called exercising.
It's not ginger murder. It's not hate crime. It's murder. You kill somebody. You rob somebody. You beat somebody. I don't care what your motivation is. You committed a crime, and you need to pay the price for that. The hate crime part is to keep eyes on the TV set, to continue people. That's just more money, more revenue generating headlines.
So here's where I thought that maybe you would take a different approach to that topic, is that I believe that maybe the other side of this argument is that by making it a difference, right, that you're actually spotlighting the issue of inequality. And
you can't.
I'm just trying to figure out what the justification is.
I don't know anybody can, but the inequality is completely separate, because the inequality has to do where the treatment that I'm going to get going before a judge compared to what you get going before that same judge. Very recently, in our state of Pennsylvania, we had a judge who was caught and then eventually tried and convicted of sentencing black children, specifically black males, to harsher sentences for juvenile acts compared to whites. They found out that the white kid committing the same crime was getting about 3 months probation, while the young black child was being sent to juvie for a year or two. And
that's locally?
That's within this state. Okay. And that's unfortunately not unique across this country.
No. It's something that gets spotlighted every once in a while.
Yes, and we mentioned the '94 crime bill. It put steroids into that, where if you sold a pound of weed, and I sold a pound of weed, you probably get fined and a year or two probation. I would be put in jail, and then if it happened again, you might get another slap of the wrist, or maybe several months, or I would have 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then again third strike, then you're in for life.
Right.
So when people act or people talk about the disparity, I mean, it's not fake. The numbers show it. It's real. Should anybody be committing the crimes? No. Should you pay a price for committing a crime? Yes. But should there be justice across the board equally? Yes, and that's the problem. It's you're and now, which really pisses me off, is the fact that we have people in jail doing stints for marijuana when we're trying to make it legal everywhere, and now you can legally sell it, but
people are still locked up.
But people are still locked up for it.
Yeah.
And to me, if you live in one of those states, you need to be. Yes, you broke the law at the time, but I'm sorry, they need to make some retroactive adjustments in people's sentences. Because
here's where
because if it's wrong and it's bad and it's evil, that doesn't change just because now you're getting money out of it.
Here's where I'll disagree with you. Okay, I agree with you that maybe if the law changes, they should be let go. But where I don't agree with you is that they should be retroactively compensated in some sort of way.
I'm not saying
and the reason,
what I'm saying is, and I'm referring
beyond
to
being let go.
I'm referring to those who especially who have not been if you did a bid for 3 years and you've been out, cool. But if you're in and you're in for life because of a third strike, and one or all was related to marijuana, that strike should be on.
Yes. Here's what I'm saying. If a law is passed and marijuana becomes legal in the state,
which it will be.
Yeah, I believe that those people should be let go. Okay, but I don't believe anything beyond letting them go should be done to retroactively, whether it's giving them some sort of financial compensation for the time that they were in jail or some sort of housing, anything, because the fact of the matter is not so much that they were selling weed, it's the fact that they broke the law, and that's where it comes down to.
I understand.
So and so I think the greatest reward, I guess you could say, for that policy being enacted is the fact that they would be let go.
Well, for me, that's not exactly. They should be let go, and it all should be stricken from the record, like it never happened. For that, if it's in their state.
But they broke the law. They are breaking the. On the record is that they broke the law, and that is what they did.
Right.
Because it was a law at the time.
It was a law at the time.
So maybe there's a way of somehow in the record addressing it that this is something that is now legal or something, but because if, let's say, all you had was a drug bid for marijuana, and you go apply for jobs that you can't get now because you have that, where now all of a sudden it's okay. That's rough. I know. Because it's a mess. It's a mess
because now it's okay. If it wasn't more okay then, it wasn't morally right then. You can't tell me it's different now. So you've got to give a little bit more than letting them go. Letting them go is a great start, but there needs to be a little bit more than letting them go.
We'll have to talk. We'll have to think about that more. We'll talk about that some other time. So we're talking about all that. Okay, so what I wanted to mention, you had me thinking about, was you had at one point in time last year recommended to me to watch this 13th documentary type of film on Netflix.
It's a documentary on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. It's available for you to watch. It goes over the 13th Amendment and talks about the 94 crime bill, talks about the incarceration rates and unequal justice. I think it's great. There are things in it that pissed me off a lot. The fact that the Van Jones is one of the people that is in the documentary after some of the crazy stuff that he has said.
Oh, granted, that was filmed before what he said during the election.
Oh, no. Van Jones has been involved in Obama's 2008 election and everything.
No, yeah, Van Jones is a very big, supporter of Obama.
But bigger than him, one of the biggest things I took issue with was the Harvard professor. Gaines, I think it was what the name was, or something.
The one that got shot.
Was it? No. It was Harvard or
The
Cambridge.
one that got arrested.
It's the guy that he was a professor. He showed up to his house, was fumbling around with the keys, couldn't get into the house. He broke into his own house. The neighbors saw someone in the shadows trying to get into the house. They called the police. The police showed up. He couldn't provide his license or anything, and he was arrested. Which. Under the circumstances, I mean, for crying out loud, he broke into the house to get in. It was his house.
He was arrested, but he was also. It was a little more than that. He was treated very roughly. He wasn't just a. It wasn't. Yeah, he didn't get no Rodney King beat or anything like that. I'm not saying he went that far, but the man was not treated. If you did the same thing, you would not have been roughed up the way he did, the way he got.
But I also
we've
talked about societal differences between races too in interaction with cops. We've had that kind of discussion before between the two of us. Which you have grown up with the perception from your parents and everything that you have to act a certain way.
You have to,
and that you have to do certain things a certain way. But I believe that culture has changed in that those people that have grown up like you have, that now have kids, tell their kids to grow up that way and act that way, and yet we're starting to see what I consider a rebellion from those kids saying, well, this is wrong, we shouldn't have to be treated any different than white people, we shouldn't have to act any different than white people, and they start mouthing off to the cops more now. And it's like...
There's definitely rebellion. There's an adage that kind of got more wind as far as people being aware of it, that black people, especially black parents, would say to their children, it was said to me, and I say it to my children, in that to get where white people are, to get what you have to be twice as good to get half of what they have. And my parents told me how to behave if I got pulled over. They told me to keep your hands on the wheel. Look, don't make any sudden movements. Do what they ask you to do. Be compliant, because what's most important is you getting home.
Yep.
Is it right? No.
No.
Is it fair? No. Until major changes continue to happen in this country, it's going to continue to not be right and not be fair. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who, when it comes to the wolves who do mouth off, because not all of them do, a lot of them don't.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
a lot of these instances we've seen,
I'm saying it's a generational
thing. Yeah, they feel that they shouldn't have to, and yes, they are correct. They shouldn't have to. However, as a people, as black people, we have been trying to tell our young people to view their survival as more important than fighting that particular battle. We need to fight that battle elsewhere, not in the heat of the moment when an officer's pulling you over for whatever the situation happens to be. Surviving that situation leaves you to fight another day in another area. Allowing you, because let's say an 18-year-old, 19 or 20-year-old kid gets pulled over for that mouth off, gets arrested, gets shot, who knows what happens. That 20-year-old kid, instead of getting hurt or getting shot, could have eventually follow whatever his life path would happen to be. He could happen to become, a civil rights lawyer,
something like that, who could bring
real change to the situation.
Yeah.
It sucks. I've been pulled over for DWB too many times in my lifetime. I told my dad I was having a conversation, just randomly about certain things a couple years ago, and my dad was like, "You never told me that happened." Mm-hmm. So I was in your car. My dad had a Mercedes-Benz at that time, and where we went to high school is a very white area. I was one of like 5 black kids in the entire school, and there's nothing but state police in the area. And I was put over multiple times for driving while black in a nice vehicle. And I didn't want to tell my father that it wasn't something I wanted to worry about. I got home safely. There was no problems. I had nothing on record, and there was nothing to be a problem with. But it happens way too often. I've been put over for driving too slow.
You can't win.
You really can't. And I was on my way to work, of all places, because I was working overnight for FedEx at that time. And there's some ways you can't win, And the best thing to do is to keep yourself alive. Because if we continue to, there's very little glory in martyrdom.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that young black people need to be doing is making themselves martyrs for the cause.
And I think that's what's feeding into that mouthing off.
And and I'm not going to blame music or whatever for any of that, because there's excuses. It's parenting, and black parents, we need to continue to step up for our children, and black people, period, need to continue to, for those who don't have parents, continue to be to stand in the gap for our young people. But however, I will say this: white people in general have, pretty much since the 80s, have stepped off of helping black people to an extent. There's a lot, we said earlier, there's a whole lot of... Stepped away. Because there's a lot of talking, a lot of pandering, a lot of, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But actual action has been low. And...
What do you feel are necessary actions to kind
of... Well, see, because a lot of people don't realize...
Beyond speaking out about it, you know?
Let me say this. A lot of people were you know, I know a lot of people were big on Bernie Sanders because he had marched with Dr. King. He was at one of the marches.
Yeah, he was about 75 years old at that
time. And I said, oh, that's cute. They're like, what do you mean? He marched with Dr. King. I said, you know, the romantic stuff, that's nice.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about is the everyday grind. So when he was a senator, what did he do when black people came to him, and black leaders came to him and said, there's problems here? Mm-hmm. in Vermont, where you have 50 black people to deal with in Vermont. Like,
really, tourists.
Yeah. So when the black and then they asked the black leaders of Vermont, what happened when you came across
Johnny
Sanders,
Maple down the street?
You know, and he's like, and then they said, not much. Sometimes they ignored it. So there wasn't much.
Okay.
So people can talk all they want, but it's action and actually going through day to day. The NAACP was founded by white people to help black people, and they were involved in the day-to-day. Historically, black colleges were funded, a lot of them were funded by white people, so that we had a place to go and educate, and they were involved in the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. Today's activist likes to talk and promise and not be involved in the day-to-day of improving lives, whether they be black, white, or candy apple red. Mm-hmm. And that is my biggest problem with talking heads and with people in politics right now when it comes to helping with race, because they're not willing to put the time in and the self-sacrifice to truly invest in black lives or other lives that need help.
That's a tough one. I gotta come at that from a little bit of a different angle, because, you know, the same way that is approached is the same way that women's rights are approached and like all this other stuff, which is, you know, if I start talking about abortion or women's health, I'm told that I'm not allowed to have a voice or a say in that matter because I'm not a woman. You know what I mean? And I feel like we've come to such a politically correct stage in this country, walking on eggshells with everything, that might be feeding into that type of situation too, where the most they can do is show verbal support and not get involved, because there have been leaders in the black community that say, you know, why the hell are you trying to help, like march along with us or whatever? You're not black. You don't know what we're really going through. So I think there's a pushback on both sides.
And I've said that personally, and I have said it, and it probably will to certain people, because we say that because we don't see you any other time except for when there's a photo op. It's a photo opportunity. Hey, I went and marched. I went and marched with the black people today. Can I get my I'm not a racist check today? Like, and some white people, and I don't put this on all white people, because some white people, like the conversation we had about the racial issues at Northwestern in high school. Yeah. You were oblivious to those.
Completely oblivious.
And that's not 100% your fault, because you were from that area. It's not something you would have known to see, to understand, mm-hmm. You weren't cognizant of it. So sometimes white people are not cognizant of the situations that are happening.
Let's quickly talk about that, though, because I said to you that not that if that was going on, but while that was going on, as a friend of yours, mm-hmm. I was never approached for help in those circumstances. And your response was that you as close of friends as we are, with our retirement plans and everything, that you couldn't trust me to not hear out your story and then turn around and take the other person's side.
I could trust you to hear it. I couldn't trust, or even see. Here's the thing. I couldn't trust, or more or less trust you to respond in kind, because I don't want to have to put you in that type of position. Let me give you an example. Okay. I'm ashamed to forget the names. No, I'm not mentioning names. I'm giving an example. The Black Power Fist, John Carlos,
right.
Tommy, and Peter Norman.
Okay.
You know who Peter Norman is?
Not okay.
Okay. So this is the thing. Peter Norman is the white guy in the picture you see of the Black Power Fist in the 1962 Olympic Games, where John Carlos, Tommy Smith, both holding up each hand with the black glove. Peter Norman, an Australian sprinter who had no business winning second place, he ran the best and fastest Australia has ever in the 100 meters to this day. And Peter Norman stood on that podium with them. He asked John Carlos and Tommy Smith if he could participate in their show of solidarity. He could not, because they didn't have another glove. He was actually willing to wear a glove.
Okay.
So they didn't have that. So he said, look, I'll wear one of the human rights pins that they have, which most people don't realize in the picture. It's a little pin on the left breast for human rights. He stood there in solidarity with John Carlos and Tommy Smith. He went home to his native Australia and was ostracized to the day he died. He should have been a national hero, but because he stood and did the right thing for human rights, for people not even from his home country.
Wait, were they mad at him for showing support, or for not showing the fist of support?
No, his home country of Australia was mad because he supported the Black American struggle.
Okay.
And he died without honor, with people killing to harass him. Now he's getting the honor he deserves afterwards. And I believe his nephew made a documentary about him that I would definitely encourage you to watch. And there's even a monument out in California. I forget at what college campus it's at, but there's a monument of that event, and his place is empty. And a lot of people think, oh wow, they took the white guy out. But actually, Peter Norman did not want to be in the monument because he wanted his space empty so that other white people could continue to stand in the gap as he did and show solidarity for what black people are going through in this country. That is the type of sacrifice that I'm talking about that has to be done for things to truly change in this country. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to get ugly. And I wouldn't want to put you in a situation where, we're a year apart in age, so if you had stood with me, and I didn't have to deal with that much more than some of our others, because most people weren't messing with me, as
you were approached by the other families for
backup
support,
right? Because most of them were not willing to deal with me, so I was obviously much larger, and more physically imposing back then, more muscles and all that before I got married and started eating a whole lot.
Well, this is testament to your wife's cooking.
Oh, you better believe it. So I had, and what I experienced racially there was nothing compared to what I had done in Pittsburgh. So I was able to brush off.
It was worse in Pittsburgh?
Infinitesimally worse.
Okay.
So because when I experienced in Pittsburgh, I was also young. I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old until 9, pretty much till 13 years old before it really stopped being a problem for me. And so what happened there, the couple times that people wanted to call me the N-word or whatever and wanted to chase me, I was like, you're nothing. You're like, I've dealt with so much worse. Like, you small potatoes. So, but those who came to me, it was completely unique to them. This was fresh. This was a fresh one. This was fresh. So, in the Peter Norman example, if I had brought you into this situation, eventually I'd be gone. And I wouldn't want to leave you in a position where now you're an outcast amongst your own people.
I think that's something. I think you're putting.
And I'm not saying that you couldn't handle that or that it necessarily would have happened, but I wasn't going to be responsible for putting you in that situation when for something that I know between myself and those who came to me that I could take care of.
Well, let's end this topic on a response to that note, right?
Okay.
Which is, if you expect white people to stand up for the cause and fight for equality, then you can't hold back in asking for that help based on the assumption that they're not going to be able to handle what they may be coming their way.
I see what you're saying there.
Because you're never going to get that help or that fight or that brother in arms in the trench with you if you can't even approach that person to say that we need the help. And if you can help, please do it.
Okay.
And then at least leave the ball in their court on whether they want to be ostracized or not.
I'm going to respond to that with this. What's the quote-unquote reason why we went into Iraq?
Well,
Give me
the reasons I always hear is because of oil or because of Saddam Hussein and how he was treating his people.
How he was treating people. So we felt compelled to interject in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't known by now, black people are very proud people. And if you see there's a problem, and we're as a country so willing to interject into helping our allies, or people who aren't our allies, in the case of Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there was vested interest there, but helping out because of democracy and helping for those people. If you see there's a problem here within your own borders, why do I have to ask you for help when you know there's help needed?
But look at our situation in high school. I had no idea.
You had no idea. And that's, again,
because of the hunky-dory nature of hanging out with you in school. Everything seemed good on the surface.
Right, because and
you were a duck.
And for us...
On the surface, you were good. You were kicking like crazy.
And for us, it was that so. It was so. And you didn't have to see that through me much because I had already experienced so much that...
Yeah, you were calcified? What is the word?
I was...
Callous.
Callous, yes.
Yeah.
You know, when I first experienced racism, when my family moved from Michigan to Pennsylvania, to the Pittsburgh area, I had no concept. My uncle, his girlfriend now, his wife, may he rest in peace. She was white. We had white people, several white members at our church. I went to a private Christian school. I had white teachers. I had, white friends. My little quote-unquote girlfriend in preschool was white. Like, it was no big deal in Grand Rapids area there. We go to Pittsburgh area in Murraysville, and my sister and I are the only black kids there. And it was, nigger this, go back to Africa on the daily. And even then, at that age, 7, 8, 9 years old, I didn't even talk about it. Like, I got harassed on the daily, and actually I just found about this recently because my wife likes to pry and talk, and stuff. And my older sister was the one who told my parents what was going on. And I had no idea how they found out. I didn't talk about it. I just dealt with it. I grinded. I went to school.
How much older is your older sister?
1.5 years.
Okay. I guess I'd never met her.
She's my father's daughter, so she ended up going back to Grand Rapids with her mother.
Oh, okay.
So she had left before we had moved.
Okay. Go ahead and wrap up that thought.
Yeah,
because we're going to move on and wrap it all up.
So needless to say, my first, I was young. Yeah. I had no preparation for racism, prejudice, or anything like that. Needless to say, by 9 years old, I was suicidal. My parents went to the school and they told my parents that kids calling me nigger was just like someone called me an idiot or a moron or something like that. Like,
that's how they reacted at the school?
That was the school's reaction. So I became...
we're not talking about the 60s, we're talking about the 90s.
We're talking the 1990s, people, yes. So I became like almost one of those Columbine kids. I became extremely bitter, extremely hateful. I hated every white person on the planet. I started dabbling with the new Black Panther Party, and it was extremely anti-white in every way, shape, form, or fashion. And if it wasn't for the fact of the prayerful support of my parents, and our church, Covenant Church of Pittsburgh, and the leadership there, and people I had, the friends that helped me out, I probably would still be that same embittered kid. So by the time you met me in '96, I had gone through that. I had overcome that. And then to the point I just didn't care. I was just more rebellious, and white people didn't like me. I said, okay, I'm gonna go flirt with your daughter now, just to piss you off, And then I told you, I had parents, come to me, after seeing me, talk to their daughters and be like, oh, you're cool, you're a really nice young man, but I don't want you talking to my daughter. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll make a note to pinch her butt in school or whatever. And that's what I said. She harassed me. But I would make a note, that to be extra flirtatious in school when I heard that. But
you were flirty. Sorry, Rebecca.
She knew me. That's all absolved.
You guys met. She knows.
So yeah. So I say that too. And again, there's a lot, and what I went through, a lot of young people haven't gone through.
Right.
And the angst and the anger they have is based off of what is shown, and also the history, because black people are starting to do a better job of explaining what is actually been happening and going on, and so they're upset about it. But we need allies. We need our white allies who are true to what they say, what people say they are, and that all lives matter, that black lives matter just as much as their lives do. And for me, that starts with beyond just. It starts with two things. It starts with education, and it starts with equal protection of the law. Because to this day,
and people talking at home.
Yes, and people talking at home.
Discussion.
But to this day, we still don't have true equal protection under the law. I'm still waiting for it. I'm still waiting for what President Lincoln put in place to actually occur.
Let's address things quick with this. Prior to Obama taking office, racial tensions getting better or staying the same, getting worse?
I'm going to say this. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not a fan of President Barack Obama. I was a fan back in my other time, in my bitter days. And I'm not I don't hate the man. I don't think he's a vindictive type of person. I think he truly believes what he's doing is right, even though I happen to disagree.
I think he is vindictive, but
I believe everyone has a vindictive point. I think he's.
I do agree with you though.
But I think he truly believes what he's doing is right, and for that I refuse to hate the man.
Right.
But I do not like his policies. I refuse to place blame on President Barack Obama for the racial tension in this country. I do think he could have said some things at better times and addressed certain things better. I think he's made mistakes racially. I don't think any of this has to do particularly with his quote-unquote presidency. A lot of this, to me, is more exposure through the internet and technology than it is his presidency. We'll concede he got into office based off racism, as far as, if you don't vote for him, why don't you? Are you racist? You're not going to vote for him because he's black? There was a lot of that being said. Whole lot of that. I saw a husband and wife get an argument, a black husband and a white wife, and she was talking about voting for McCain. He's like, wow, you racist?
Is it okay. Is it also considered racist to vote for him purely because he's black?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who said to me, I voted for him because he was black. And they were just hoping for the historical part more than really seeing if this was actually the best choice. Now, granted, McCain is a hot mess too, so I don't know if he would actually be any better if he had gotten in office right now.
No. I always said that he would be
the platform he claimed to be running on, on paper was just the lesser of two evils for most conservatives, including myself, and honestly,
But here I want you to go back to my question. I want to address that, which is leading up to Obama's presidency.
Well,
do you feel
race,
growing up?
Do I think race has gotten better?
Yeah, up until his presidency.
No.
Do you feel like it was getting better?
No.
You don't feel like it's been dying out with generations?
No.
Being born?
I don't.
Not at all. No change.
I really don't. Again, because I think the way racism is expressed has changed. I don't think that it has truly died or had this slow death. I think things have improved as far as how people, the reactions and the legal ramifications now, because before, before black people would get lynched and beaten, killed, and murdered, and nothing happened. Now things happen. That's a legal thing. That's the law being enacted, not a testament to the hearts and minds of the citizens.
See, I think we've had this conversation before, and I believe I said that that's upsetting because it's a perception. I feel that that's a difference between the races, which is like you're going to always perceive that the racism itself has just gone to undertones instead of the outward, call for action against blacks. I feel like I really truly feel like with every generation that's born into the circumstances of these fights for equal rights and parents and everything telling their kids like this is wrong, that it's dying out, I believe, at a fairly quickly pace within the generations.
Yeah, and that could be with generations, but from what I don't see that dying.
But you're also looking at it from the other side of the glass.
I am also looking from the other side of the glass, and you are.
And I can understand why you on that side of the glass is seeing it the way you are. So
and for example, one of my kids, right, my niece, my wife and I, she raises one of our daughters. I often am alone with her, taking her to physical therapy or places, and I very often get this look of, why is this black man walking around with this white kid? Mm-hmm. And giving me this look like, do I need to call the police? Like, what's going on? Not to mention that she's grinning all the time and she's happy. She's holding my hand. I'm clearly not kidnapping her, mm-hmm. But I still continue to this day, and after years of going to the same place for therapy, we'll see people then continue to give me these stares and these looks like, oh, like, why is this guy have this little girl? That unfortunately is just something that I have to deal with, and that anyone in a blended family unfortunately has to deal with. That unfortunately does not go away. I've seen improvement in some areas, but until I really see a true change, I really can't say I do. Like the police shootings, we've been saying this for years and years and years. We put it on TV shows to try to show white people this is what's happening to us. Mm-hmm. Remember, they put it on Family Matters when Eddie got in trouble, got put over, and they're like, oh. And Carl went to talk to his fellow cops and like, oh, he's just a black guy. We've been saying this in mediums, in television, and music for years. Mm-hmm. And yes, maybe F the police was exactly the way to hear, but hey, we're pissed off and angry for a reason. Mm-hmm. And now I think President Obama's election coming at a time where, in 2008, where social media really exploded, and video especially became a medium that people were like, oh, I can use this. And we then were exposed to more and more of these instances that black people have been saying have been happening forever, that have been continued to be brushed under the rug and brushed under the rug. And with some of the instances, especially where there's clearly nothing done wrong. Like there have been, obviously the debated issues on, was Garner and and Brown and and Castile and others, where people want to debate, whether this person was engaged in criminal activity at the time or not. But we have plenty of examples where there's not at all, and shot for no reason. The dude, the therapist in Florida, on the ground, arms in the air. This dude's in his 50s. Mm-hmm. Shot. Why did you shoot me? I don't know. That's not acceptable. Yeah. So from what I'm saying, I can't say that I see improvement when I don't see it. I see attitudes, and people say they want to improve, and that's great. And I truly hope that is the case. And I continue to try to work and talk to people like yourself, because I want that to be the case. Mm-hmm. But you can't fix 400 plus years of racial problems in a 50-year span. Yep. It just takes more time. And I think people on both sides need to be patient and are cognizant of the fact that we can't fix that. We can't snap our fingers and say there's no more racial problems. Yep.
Well, listen, we have gone an hour over what I've done with the past podcast, but that's for the benefit of everyone, really, I believe, to have discussions like this. I'm not even going to get to the last article here, which was the other Piers Morgan piece. You can head over to my Facebook page, The Generation Y Conservative, and read that. It's the on the Daily Mail titled "The Game's Over, Mr. President, and your team lost, and your Trump temper tantrum, and show some dignity," because he's been using the last couple days of his administration to really screw things up for Trump before he gets into office, so that it's a no-win situation.
Didn't he say he was ahead of the baton or something of that nature?
Well, Obama's saying that he's going to stay in the spotlight, that he's going to keep in the spotlight, unlike President Bush and everything.
He's a celebrity, of course he's going to.
That is all it was. Anyway, the point is, kind of, you can go and read up on that last article since we're not going to cover it tonight. But to go along with the discussion that Matt and I just had here, I shot a television pilot for a show that should be launching next month on a local cable station here, and we'll be posting those full episodes to YouTube with full ownership of those episodes. But within the pilot that I shot, I actually addressed, at the time, 5 days after the Dallas shooting of the police officers, Black Lives Matter versus the police. And I really tried as hard as I could to approach both sides and what they were feeling emotion-wise. Looked into, at the time, Sean King and what he was saying, what the movement was about, what the issues were that they were fighting for, and also on the flip side, looking at police officers and why they are fearful for their lives and the circumstances that they're being thrown into. It's called Black Lives Matter versus the Police. It's a segment I did for that show. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can actually click on the video. I'll actually edit that in and post that up there for you to actually get a link to and watch. I thought it came out great, especially in regards to that both sides are fearful for their lives. That's what it comes down to, you know. Yeah. And if we just stop to actually talk about solutions instead of playing this blame game, you know, there were solutions proposed in that. I actually spoke with a police officer who said that one of the very simple things we can do, it's not an end-all band-aid to the whole situation, but that we start setting up boards of people in communities, whether it's black leaders in the community, faith leaders, retired police officers, a panel of people that can address what are accused of racial situations, to address them before it's brought to the media's attention, so that they can calm the flames of the rhetoric on both sides of the issue, so that black leaders can get together with retired police officers and say, listen, here are the facts, and, you know, we're coming to you as a board of people so that we don't have these riot situations. So it's a great video. Check it out. There's some great things in that. I want to thank Matt for joining me. I'm definitely going to have him back because we keep on running into these issues. Plus, I just enjoy talking to him all the time. Anyway, we always get into it in private messages over politics and everything. So that's exactly why I had him on. I already have multiple guest co-hosts lined up for the coming weeks. Whether or not they make it in a row consecutively, we're trying to figure that out right now, but I have some great people from all different types of backgrounds that are going to be coming on and co-hosting with me. I think it's great for opening up conversation. Obviously, if we went an hour over time for this...
I'm kind of surprised we only went over an hour, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, we could keep on going. I mean, the fact is, Facebook Live only lets you stream for 3 hours, and I'm going to run out of space on the other HD camera. But I want to thank everybody else for tuning in as well. Again, if you're watching right now, you're watching on Facebook Live, you can... what I would encourage you to do is go to my Generation Y Conservative Facebook page. Obviously, we are open to open discussion, different ideas. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to open your mind, make you think differently, which is different than the way our society teaches us anymore, which is that you have to think a certain way. I choose to try to go down a fine line and show both sides as much as possible. I know I'm not always successful in that because I have my own opinions, but I want you to actually choose where you stand on the issues and actually think for yourself instead of being told what to think. So go to my Facebook page, The Generation Y Conservative. Hit like on that, share it with friends and family. Share this video with friends and family, especially if you know Matt. He shared the video. It's it would be great for his friends and family to see his involvement in this as well. Also, head to my YouTube page because that is where the action is going to be happening. This Facebook Live video, we can only do so much. We can only show so much of the set, especially with our sizes.
I'm working on those.
But you're gonna see the whole set here, and more. You're gonna see some past videos, an analysis of the president, the people that were running for president. I want you to hit subscribe on that and also share that as well. On Twitter, @GenYConservative. If you're watching on the YouTube video right now, you'll actually see that across the bottom of the screen. So once again, thank you very much. This is the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. Have a great night, and once again, thank you for tuning in.